Hi guys, it's Stu here. These are the settings that I'm using for 1208.2, so we'll quickly go through them. Picture mode we always have at movie, because that's the closest to SMPTE standards. Picture at 16:9 standard, and then we go to expert settings. Backlight we have for 20 for HDR. For standard sort of HD content, non-HDR content, you can knock that down to 12. I get asked a lot about the backlight and where it should be for non-HDR as opposed to HDR. So just to recap, 20 for HDR. For non-HDR content, you can knock that down to 12 or anywhere in between. I tend to have it at 20 nearly all the time. Simply because I got used to how bright the TV is, and it looks great regardless. But it may be too bright for you for non sort of HDR content, so you can knock it down. And I found sort of for non-HDR around 12 is fine. Brightness I've knocked down a little bit because the update has made the panel, I feel, a bit brighter, so I've turned the brightness down to 43, contrast as usual at 100, sharpness at 0. Because the panel is a little bit brighter now because of the update, I've upped the color just a tiny bit, just to 47, tint at 50/50, apply to all sources. Digital clean view, as ever, we turn that off because it crushes everything and ruins stuff. Auto motion plus, we only have that on, just on. I don't actually have it in terms of any settings, but all it does, just by turning it on and then not adjusting any of the blur reduction or having those at 0 and LED clear motion most certainly are off, what that then does, it just takes away some of any possible judder, but it does in such a very subtle way that you're not going to get any awful artifacts or any of the sort of the soap opera TV soap effect, you know, where it's kind of artificial looking. So but it's so subtle, oops. So we have digital clean view off, auto motion plus set it custom, smart LED at high, HDMI UHD color again on all outputs, dynamic contrast off. We turn it off simply because it has a habit of crushing blacks. It really does crush shadows. It takes out all the detail from shadows, so turn that off. Color tone at warm 2. If that's too yellow for you, then you can always go to warm 1. Any of the others are too artificial, really. But you know, you have to understand in a lot of ways that when you get your TV, it's set for usually really badly, and the trouble is we get used to that. We get used to seeing overly colorful images, overly unnatural sort of images, and then when we adjust it and calibrate it, what tends to happen is that people end up getting disappointed because it's not what they're used to. Well, of course it's not what they're used to, because the TV is now calibrated properly and looks different. But what the fact of the matter is, it's more natural, and we tend to sort of get so used to seeing unnatural, overly unnatural colors on the TV, because you know we see it all the time, and many people don't bother calibrating their TV, so they get kind of upset a little bit when the TV's calibrated, and it's like, that's not what I wanted. But it's like, yeah, this is how a TV should be. So yeah, again, color tone at warm 2, white balance. Now you got to remember, this is for my panel, for my TV. You can use these if you've got a KS8000 65-inch panel TV, then you know, which is fine. If it's in the US, it's the KS9000. Then you can probably try these. But if you haven't got a KS8000 in the UK, KS9000 in the US, then you're probably better off steering away from these. But I'll put them up, and you can pause when on each one. You know, by all means, try them if you like, but the 10-point and 2-point are really very specific to the panel, and because of tolerances in panels, even with the same sets, you can get variations that you know, can swing things a little bit. But it's worth a shot. If you've got the same TV as I have, then give it a go. If not, then just leave them all at 0. It's not going to make an enormous amount of difference. It's just that, you know, this TV has been properly calibrated on that front, on the white balance front, with a calibrator. And not everyone has one of these. Gamma, I've actually just upped a bit, and this is kind of related to the fact that the color is a little bit washed out, and I wanted just to sort of reduce some of the backlighting and everything, but just sort of pump up some of the gamma a little bit, just to lift what I'm taking off in some ways, but without kind of making things overly bright. So I've just added the gamma just to 1. Color space I've set to native. Basically that means that, you know, whatever the source is being fed to it, it will, you know, go to the native with whatever's being fed, so that kind of takes precedence over that. You can set it to auto, and it will kind of do that sometimes, but with native, I'm led to believe that it does it. It's autumn, you know, it's really looking for that detail. Say for instance, with the Xbox One X, it's looking for that information from the Xbox One X, and then adjusting that color natively within it. Custom is where it's just the TV, and it's going to ignore everything. Auto is where it'll just do it automatically. So, you know, you can always just ignore auto, but I tend to go for native. So there we have it. Pretty easy to deal with. Quickly again, backlight at 20, around about 12 for non-HDR. Brightness I've knocked down a little bit, contrast at 100, sharpness at 0, color at 47, we just lifted it a little bit. Apply to all sources, digital clean view off, auto motion plus, just set to custom with none of the settings on. And get back, smart LED high, HDMI UHD color on all sources, dynamic contrast off, color tone at warm 2. Again, if that's too yellow for you, you can try warm 1, which is more of a cooler, bluer tone, white balance.